I long for a day when all religions are viewed as the superstitions they are.
I've been speaking for about a year now, and it goes over like different types of issues, mainly like equal rights issues, including like women's rights, like women's health care, abortion, LGBT rights, gun violence, and just different topics. I spoke at the Women's March in Cincinnati, the March for Science, a national convention such as the American Atheists Convention. There's so many religions out there, and they're all being disproved, and it just seems there's no gods or goddesses or any supernatural being out there.
We cannot work on our solutions to our problems until we agree on the facts. The scientific method is the best method we have. Once you try bringing the supernatural into the equation, it is no longer science.
I mean, a lot of people say like atheists can't have morals and they'll never be happy, but I mean, you don't need someone to tell you that you're a good person to be a good person.
When someone is in need, we don't sit at home and send them our thoughts and prayers. We actually go help them.
You know, you could feed the homeless being an atheist and feel good about that you're helping people. You don't have to say, God told me I did something good, so I did something good.
If you truly want to reduce the need for abortions in Ohio, then contraceptives and birth control would be free and easily accessible. States like Colorado have already taken these steps, and their teen pregnancy rates, STD rates, and abortion rates have gone down by 30 to 40%.
My dream is just to create equality for all people and normalize atheism and get women to be treated equally and paid equally, and the LGBT community is not going to be fired just because they're an LGBT person. And just to create equality for all people, that would be my dream.
It is said that well-behaved women seldom make history. We are the future!
And the speaker for this month's program is Mr. Jim Helton, and he's the national field organizer for American Atheists. He will be presenting on the topic, American Atheists, the time is now. Jim will discuss American Atheists grassroots activism program and how to build a sustained social movement. He will challenge the status quo by redefining what constitutes an atheist issue and lay out a plan to fight for equality and the true separation of religion and government. After Jim attended the 2012 Reason Rally in Washington, D.C., Jim co-founded the Tri-State Freethinkers and was appointed American Atheists Kentucky State Director. Under his leadership, Tri-State Freethinkers adopted the highway in front of the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter and led a protest that received international attention. Jim played a key role in eliminating Gideon's Bible distribution in public schools and removing abstinence-only sex education. His activism at the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter landed him appearances in the 2017 documentary film Bill Nye and the Science Guy and the forthcoming documentary We Believe in Dinosaurs. Jim has been quoted in countless news outlets, including the New York Times, Miami Herald, and the Washington Post. He is a fixture in local media and has given interviews for international television specials in France, Switzerland, and elsewhere. As national field organizer, Jim worked with affiliates, local partners, and state directors to challenge religious privilege and fight to protect church-state separation at the local level by building coalition around specific issue campaigns, including medically accurate sex education, LGBT, non-discrimination ordinance, and religious exemption. So please welcome Mr. Jim Helton.
Thank you. So my name is Jim Helton. I'm the National Field Organizer for American Atheists. I am a professional atheist. This is actually what I get to do for a living. There are a few of us out there. And I'm very honored to do that and to be speaking with you today. Like I said, I co-founded the Tri-State Freethinkers. Most of the program that I'm going to show you today was based on the ACES program, which stands for Activism, Community, Education, Social. I always said when I became an atheist 7 years ago that the one thing the church had over us was a sense of community. They can no longer say that. We've actually built strong, thriving communities, and I want to share some of those best practices with you. And if you wonder why I'm here, like I was telling some at the other table, it's all my wife's fault. You know, I was a good Catholic, which it was only cultural Catholic. The priest was explaining the Eucharist to my wife, and my wife looked him in the eye and said, "You want me to eat who and drink what?" That was my downfall of losing my faith from that moment on. But today I'm going to talk about just a quick recap of the future of atheist activism. I'm going to talk about what we are currently doing, some of the success stories we had. If I have time, I'll go into a little bit of detail of the ACES program and talk about our directors and affiliates, which is a very new initiative for American Atheists and how we're handling these things. But in the future of atheist activism, we wanted to redefine what is an atheist issue. And if I would ask this group, what is an atheist issue? When you think of atheist issues, what do you consider? Is this pretty much primarily what would be on the list? Removing prayer from public schools, stopping Bible distributions, taking down 10 commandments, big crosses in city buildings. Is that kind of traditionally what you think of? American Atheists has been doing this for over 50 years. And unfortunately, we'll probably have to continue for the next 50 years doing these things. It is my favorite pastime. I thoroughly enjoy doing this. Every time we do it, we get more members, we get more donations. But in the general public, would you say these are fairly unpopular? People tend not to like when we treat religion with equality. They like their privilege. They do not look. I say the worst thing you could ever do to a Christian is treat them equally. They hate that. But the question was, what about all the other issues we face? Are these atheist issues? What about dying with dignity? Would you consider that an atheist issue? Not a humanist issue, not a moral issue, but like for American atheists, an actual atheist issue. What about sex education? Is this something that atheists should take on? I see some yeses. I see some not sures. Maybe a no here and there. What about LGBTQ issues? What about abortion? Is that an atheist issue? Women's rights, science history, racial justice. What we found when we talked to groups around the country, there were arguments on all these issues, where there were people saying these are atheist issues, we must act. We had other people saying these aren't atheist issues, we're losing focus. You know, this is what we should be doing. These aren't atheist issues. And basically, you know what happened around the country with this argument? Nothing. It created inaction across the country and division where we saw groups taking no action whatsoever. So instead of arguing about each one of these issues, we thought it was very important to set clear definition of what is an atheist issue. So if a group was going to tackle something on, they could just ask 3 simple questions. If it met any one of those criteria, then it's an atheist issue. They could easily act without having to do all this board vote, without having any arguments. The definitions are pretty simple. Here's the very first definition I brought to the table. Who is behind the issue? If the answer is religion, then my argument is it's an atheist issue. Plain and simple. Let's go back to this list. Dying with dignity. Who's against that? Catholics? Sex education. Evangelicals. LGBTQ. Pick your religious denomination. Abortion. Same thing. Treating women equally. Again, science, history, you got your creationists. I would argue that every single one of these issues goes away if you take religion out of the equation except for one, and that's racial justice. While the Ku Klux Klan is clearly a Christian hate group, if you take that out, we still have a racial problem. But beyond that, all of these go away. And I'm not guessing. I know this because we actually have states in this country that aren't religious. I know being in Michigan, you might find that hard to believe, but they're out there. They exist. Other countries that are atheistic and secular are not having these arguments like we are today. They're not. The second issue, is religion being used as an excuse to discriminate? If the answer is yes, then it's an atheist issue. And nowhere is it more apparent than LGBTQ and abortion. Ohio just passed a 6-week abortion ban, which makes it a felony. Most women don't know they're pregnant, which makes women eligible for the death penalty for having an abortion after 6 weeks, with no exceptions.
What if they go to another state?
If they have the means.
What if it's a natural, in other words, they abort the child naturally?
It's problematic. So the governor vetoed this last year. I don't know if he'll veto it this year because they want these cases to go to the Supreme Court. He vetoed it last year because they didn't want it to go to the Supreme Court because they knew they would lose. Now they want these cases to go to the Supreme Court because the ultimate goal is to overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, when I came to American Atheists, I came with this business plan. These are my definitions. This is what I proposed. This is why I was hired. This is what I was here to do. Never in a million years did I think I would be taking on this one. And I'm going to explain. I never thought the weather and guns would be an atheist issue. I just didn't. And so, as of this year, I had to evolve as well, and we came up with a new definition. If religion is offered as a solution instead of evidence-based solutions. And let me give you some real-life examples from some of our lovely politicians around the country. And these are press clippings. These are real. Utah's governor asked people to pray for snow. They had a drought. They didn't implement water conservation. They just said, pray for snow. It worked last year. We'll be fine. That was the solution. We need to stop hurricanes. We need to ban the gays and abortion. We're not going to work on the environment. We're not going to talk about climate change. We just need to ban the gays and abortion and everything will be fine. Florida school shootings. Now, we're not talking, are they admitting there's a problem or not? They already brought this to the Senate floor. They said, we have a problem. They've already admitted this, so that conversation's over. Their solution, only thoughts and prayers will stop the evils behind shootings, and forcing in God we trust in every classroom as mandatory. Now, if I want to divide a room of atheists, there's no quicker way to do that than talk about guns. So let's talk about guns. I don't care if this side of the room is against guns, because you look like you are, and this side of the room looks like they're very pro-gun over here, right? Right. I just nailed this right off the bat. This isn't the conversation, but let me see if I can unite this room under one thing. Can we agree on guns, which I know is a tough statement right there alone, but I'm going to attempt to. Can we agree thoughts and prayers won't keep students safe? Can we agree in God we trust posters made out of paper won't keep our students safe? So here's what we must demand out of our politicians. We want evidence-based solutions on anything. Now, I cannot respond to every jackass that says something stupid around the country. I can't. Do you think they care if somebody from New Jersey says something about what they're doing in their state in Florida? No. But if somebody in Michigan says something stupid, you can. And not only can you, I would argue you should. Because they care. And not only do it as an individual, do it in the names of your group. And call them out. We will help you with the language. We will help you with the press release. But it means more when a local group and a local affiliate is saying these things versus somewhere out of state who they could not care about. We need to hold our politicians accountable on these issues. So again, these definitions became a game changer for the atheist movement and what we've seen groups do. Instead of fighting about issues, what they did was ask any one of these 3 questions, and if the answer is yes, they can act. And because of this, we've seen groups around the country starting to act on issues where religion is imposing its will. For far too long, we were on that left side of the screen only taking care of Bibles and state commandments. At the same time, our rights were getting destroyed by religion and everything else because we were not in this space. No more. The time is now to take action to stand up for equality, to stop religious oppression, we must be in the space wherever religion is. And if it's there, we must be there with resources to help you. We do not expect you to do this alone. We are here to provide resources and help, like training like you've never seen before, if you're involved in any one of those issues where you're going to take on religion in your local area. Our unofficial slogan is out of the pubs into the state houses. While it is fun to drink beer and bitch about religion, or for you wine snobs out there too, or if you're a lightweight like me and just have a water, that's okay. But we must do more. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. How many people are happy with the current federal government and think it represents your humanistic values? Besides this guy, anybody else? What about your local government? Do you think they share your values and represent humanism and secular values? No. So here's my question, except for you, because you're excused from this conversation. Like this guy. But my question to you is, only this gentleman raised his hand. If you do not raise your hand, my question to you is simple. What are you going to do about it? Are we just going to eat lovely food here and then go home? Are we going to bitch about it in the pub? Or what are we going to do about it? It's a simple question. Yes?
Well, I go to government meetings a lot, and they say the Pledge of Allegiance. I never stand up for it.
Good. I don't either. You know why I don't anymore? Because my kids didn't. And I'm like, if my kids, I can do this as well. So there's a few things you can do. You can go to our website. We're currently tracking 165 bills as of 2018. In 2019, it's going to be a whole lot more. You can click on your state, and it'll show you all the bills in Michigan we're for and all the bills we're against. We're usually against a lot more bills than we're for. If you would like to testify on these bills, we'll write the testimony for you. And you can represent yourself or your local group and testify, which we are doing in Ohio and Kentucky all the time, where we have a voice to speak out. My daughter has done this at the age of 13. If she can do it, so can you. We also have Project Engage, where you can engage your politicians. Have you ever wrote your politician email saying you're against the bill and he sends you an email bragging about how he just passed it? So what we have found is, while continue to send calls and emails to your senator, but call them out on social media. Hey, do you believe religion should be used as an excuse to discriminate? Hashtag atheist voter. And if they ban you, we will sue them. They can't. By law, they cannot ban you on their social media account for policy. As long as you're behaving, but asking them tough questions and holding them accountable and getting them on the record. And you know what? Every now and then, one of your politicians may respond positively to you. The other resource we're offering is a lot of toolkits and presentations. While I ask you what you're going to do about it, I imagine some people said, I would like to do something, but I feel powerless. I don't know what to do. If there was something I could, I would, but I just don't know what to do and throw up our hands. I'm with you. I hear that a lot. So this is just a sample, and I'm going to go over some of these. We have more, but in the time frame we have, I want to give you just a sample. Each one of these is over an hour presentation that comes with an entire toolkit, and it comes with training that we can step-by-step train you through each one of these processes if this is an issue you care about. The first one that I am most passionate about is sex education in our public schools. And this is probably my favorite quote. Our schools teaching abstinence-only sex education are claiming it's 100% effective. This is being pushed by churches whose entire religion is founded on the idea that a virgin got pregnant. What you think about that just for a minute? And let's not kid ourselves. Churches are teaching this in our public schools. Do you know how many states require sex education to be medically and scientifically accurate? 13. Do you know how many require consent? 8. It is legal in my state of Kentucky to say babies come from a stork dropped on your mommy's doorstep. Just don't have sex till you're married. Michigan's not much better. So when I travel, I always like to see states where you are on sex education and how smart you are. And some states are smarter than others. So this is the part of the program where I judge you. So I want to see how you do. I have a couple trivia questions throughout the evening. This is my first one. So when it comes to sex, you as Michigan humanists, freethinkers, atheists, however you identify, what words of emotional effects of sex come to mind? What do you think of? Do you guys not have sex in Michigan?
Just oral, we talk about it.
You just talk about it, but you don't do anything about it? What emotions come to mind? Does anybody? What? Pleasure. There you go. There's somebody brave. What else? Good answer. Anything else? Love. There's a novel thought. Not always, but sometimes. What else? Pregnancy. Yeah. Sometimes it's not emotional. I mean, it's a reason after effect, but it's not emotional. Yeah, but it's not the. But we have pleasure, we have fun, we have love, we have passion. But that's not what they teach in our schools. You all failed at this miserably, by the way. So your first exam, not so good. Let me give you the correct answers. Guilt, disappointment, depression, sadness, worry, loneliness, and loss of self-esteem. Now, I told both my kids disappointment's legit. Like, that's a thing. And you're going to be on the giving and receiving end of this, so be prepared, even as an adult. But beyond that, the rest of this is garbage. They're teaching that sex is a horrible, disgusting thing that we should save for the one we marry. Yeah. They told my son condoms had a 35% failure rate not to use them. He raised his hand and said, it's 2% if you would teach me how to use them. He then went to Planned Parenthood and said, can I have some shirts? They loaded him up with a dozen I Stand with Planned Parenthood, and he passed them out to his classmates the next day. He then wore an atheist shirt every day the church was there. My favorite being, we'll convert for evidence. And he sat in the front row. They told my daughter she was pre-chewed chewing gum if she had sex before marriage. And then she had to write an essay, what did it mean to be pre-chewed chewing gum? I'm just getting started. I could go on all day. Huh? Pre-chewed chewing gum? Like if I had gum and I chewed it, now would you want to have it after it's already been used?
They call it damaged goods.
Yeah. And then if you had it and then I gave it to you to chew, would you eat it? That's what it's like when you've had sex with somebody. It's disgusting to have sex with somebody who's already had sex. They've already had sex. That's the moral of the story. Or they spit in a cup and have 10 people do it, and they ask the last person to drink it because that's what it's like having sex with somebody who's had sex before. Yeah, or the sticky tape. They put tape on your arm and say, see how sticky it is? This is when you find the person you love. But if you went and had multiple people, see how it doesn't stick anymore? It's hard to have a good relationship after you've had sex more than one time. This is what they're teaching in schools all over the country. Now, I would argue, you know all those issues I put up on the right side? A lot of people would say those are controversial issues. I would disagree. I'm going to make a controversial statement. I don't think any of them are controversial. The only thing that makes them controversial is people don't like the answers. But we know what the problem is. We know how to fix it. We know the solution. And in sex education, we do. My daughter said it in her video. In Colorado, they gave out free contraceptives, including implants, did comprehensive sex ed that was medically and scientifically accurate, and their teen STI and abortion rate fell by over 40% overnight. Just like that. That's the answer. In Ohio, their infant mortality rate, because they shut down so many women's clinics, is equivalent or worse than a third world country. There's no good excuse for that. I will say something about this as well. You know, if we want to take on issues at the federal government where you throw up your hand and say, what can we do? I would argue with you. What can we do? Depending on your state, you might be like, hey, I can do something in my state. Depending on the state you live in, you might be like, I don't know what we can do. How's Michigan on state legislation? Good, bad, awful? Right. So what are you going to do statewide? You're like, we can't do anything, right? This is something we can do. And do you want to know how good American Atheists is at this and how effective it is? Planned Parenthood offered us a contract to train their employees how to get sex ed in public schools in Ohio. We are that good at it. Health departments have come to us and said, Jim, I'm with the health department. I can't get into the public schools. You're telling me you're going in there as Jim Helton with American Atheists, and as an atheist, you're getting into the school. Yes. We're doing it wrong. I went, yes. We have a very good approach to getting this in. And we teach it and train it for free, and we're starting to do this around the country. I'm very excited about this. If you start this, if you said, Jim, I want to tackle sex ed in my school district, and we start next month, we'll have it done by summer. It's that quick. It's something we can actually change. It's something we can actually affect. So my challenge to you in this room is contact your local school district. Ask them what's being taught, and take my card and tell me what the program is. It's my one ask. How hard is that? If you want to do something, contact your local middle school, high school, or school district and just say, I would just like to know the name of the program, and can I take a look at it and report back to me? That's all I'm asking. How hard is that? I have done this out of state with no parent, no student, and I've changed sex ed. Yes?
So, 3 kids in the local school district don't know the name of the sex ed program. It is not abstinence only. It's supposed to be some wonderfully progressive sex education. It horrifies me. They teach about sexually transmitted diseases in 4th grade. They don't teach actual sexual information until 7th grade. I mean, they teach every last scary thing to little kids. They don't teach abstinence only, but they teach abstinence strongly preferred. Abstinence is the major advice. If you're going to have sex, make sure it's not unprotected. There's no mention of pleasure. There's no mention of gratification. There's a lot of plumbing, information about it. So it's crappy, but it's not.
So it's a good start. So what I always do with schools is I went to one like that in Ohio. And it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't gender neutral. They didn't have sexual orientation or gender identity. I take schools where they are and I give them a compliment. The fact that you're teaching sex ed starting at the 4th grade is fantastic. I mean, even an abstinence in that young of an age group, that's really all they need to be talking about. That's fine. In middle school, they need to start talking about contraceptives. You do it age-based. But we look at what they are, and we can recommend some programs that are a little bit better. And we can recommend a policy a little bit better. So I'm actually excited, believe it or not, with the programs I've seen. I'm actually excited by your school and what they're trying. They're trying to do the right thing. And we can help them. And probably what happens is that they might even have a good program. The teachers just need proper training on how to train this. Because in my daughter's school, after getting that program thrown out, my daughter has an amazing sex ed teacher that's teaching comprehensive, full-blown sex ed. We got it out of her school, we thought. Her friend with another teacher is rolling dice to see what STDs they'll get if they have sex. In the same school, in the same grade, it's teacher-based. What that tells me is the program might not be that bad, but the teacher is, and they need training. We want to take them where they are, and we will guide them. And no matter how good they think it is, it can usually always get better. And if it is everything we want it to be, then we are going to brag about it and tell every other school district, here's what this school's doing, and here's how amazing it is. Can I use you as a reference? The health department was working on the city of Cincinnati for 5 years with no luck. We did it in 6 months. And now I go to school districts around the city and I say, hey, would you like a reference? Here's what we did in the city of Cincinnati. This is something we can actually make change. And almost every issue I put up there, I can relate back to sex ed. You care about LGBTQ issues, anybody? Sex ed. Gender identity, sexual orientation. There you go. You care about women's rights, equality? Sex ed. You care about abortion? Sex ed. You care about poverty? Sex ed. Everything, consent, sex ed. And not the consent to where it's I'm a man, I can do whatever I want to a woman until she tells me no. That's crap. We need to teach, I need a yes before I can do anything to anyone. Yes?
When you say Trump, isn't it a little late to say Trump?
But if you look at Kavanaugh, what are we talking about? That whole Kavanaugh, we were talking about high school consent. Using the paper, using the media to talk about things. Just Google one of your school districts and see what sex scandals going on at your local school. I guarantee you don't have to go very far to find one. Use it. Go into the school. And we will give you the proper language of how to do this. Even the most conservative of schools, it's hard not to take us seriously, our approach on this. It's good. It's very good. Yes?
So the school districts don't mind having atheists, having the atheists come in, or do the parents?
So let me be clear, and I'll go in this in a little more detail. Now, am I teaching sex ed? No. Planned Parenthood's the #1 group in the country. I would never even begin to try to tell them how to do sex ed. But I'm an activist. I'm in sales. This is something I know. So here's my approach. Now, every school's different. You have to take them for where they are. But this would be a sample conversation. I would walk up and say, hi, I'm Jim Helton with American Atheists. I'm here to talk to you about sex education. You're probably wondering why I'm here, and you probably want to know what my agenda is. And that's fair, so I'm just going to lay it out on the table for you right now. And you let me know if you disagree with anything I say. I'm here for 4 reasons. 1, I want to decrease teen pregnancy. 2, I want to decrease teen STIs. 3, I want to decrease the need for abortions. And 4, I want to decrease sexual harassment and bullying. Do you disagree with any of those things? Great, we want the same thing. We're on the same team. We're on the same page. Fantastic. By the way, can you tell me what you're teaching for your program? #1 answer I get, I don't know. They don't know. That's red flag #1. When I do find out after reviewing the program, I come back with them and I said, hey, remember when we met a couple weeks ago and we agreed on these 4 things? And I lay them out again. And they say yes. I said, I've had a chance to look at your program. Not only does your program not address these 4 things, it actually increases these 4 things. Are you willing to look at evidence-based programs that share our values and the community's values to decrease teen STIs and pregnancies? It's really hard to argue. What I don't do is push a program. What I don't do is say all these things. But guess what? When I got them to agree to decrease sexual harassment, guess what they just agreed to? Teach proper consent. When I got them to agree to decrease teen pregnancy and STIs, guess what I just got them to agree to? Contraceptives. When I got them to say to decrease bullying, guess what they just agreed to? Gender neutral, sexual orientation, sexual identity. But if I go out firing with here's what I want comprehensive and here's all the things on my agenda, they're going to say no. So I say, here's what I want, but I know what the answers are. I just don't lay that out. So by the time I get to all those things, they've already agreed. I ask them a lot of questions. What grade do you start this in? How long do you teach it for? Do you do demonstrations? Do you teach it yourself, or do you bring in outside groups? I ask them these series of questions. I plug it into a website that I can show them right then and there, and it spits me out 2 or 3 programs that are comprehensive that meet their criteria of everything they asked for. Here's the program that you said you wanted. Here it is. It's not me selling a program. It works. It works very well. That's the simple version of it. Every school will be different. Every hurdle will be done. But I also hold them accountable. Do you know who our #1 opponent to putting sex ed is in schools? Or any issue I'm going to bring up. We have one opponent every freaking time, our #1 enemy. No. 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 It's everybody who agrees with us but is afraid of a few phone calls is our #1 enemy every time. Every time. We went to different school boards. I talked to each school board member individually, all 9 of them. All 9 of them agreed with me. And at the moment of the vote, they were all ready to change their vote 15 minutes before because they were afraid they were going to get a few phone calls. Until I held them accountable. And one of the conversations went like this. I told them, you know who our #1 enemy is? And I look them dead in the eye. And they said, Jim, I don't disagree with anything you said. But I'm not for it either. I'm just taking the information. I'm going to pass it on to the school board and the parents. I'm neutral. And I said, I appreciate that. And today, you should be neutral. You should not believe a word I said. I'm just somebody off the street. But here's the information that we talked about. Here's my references and sources to back up everything I said. 85% of parents and students want proper sex ed taught. This isn't controversial. Here's all the studies that back it up. I go, but when I come back next month, you can no longer remain neutral. Because if I am lying, you should come out and tell the school board I'm lying and come out against me. But one of these programs increases teen pregnancies and STIs, the other one decreases it. You cannot hand them both on a platter and say pick one. You must educate the people based on the research you've done over the next 30 days of which one of us is lying and which one of us is correct. But neutrality is not an option when I come back.
I'm still afraid for those women in Ohio. I can't get it out of my mind that what is it going to take for the police to come after you if you have a spontaneous natural abortion? Because, I mean, I just read some research that
So let me answer your question this way. If you're asking me to defend that bill, I can't. That's why it's so scary. Like, there's legitimate, yes.
Who might avoid medical care because.
But this isn't the first time. Like, they've passed over 20 abortion restrictions in the last 6 years and shut down over half the clinics in Ohio. And our new governor is even worse on abortion than he is. He wants an outright ban.
Isn't he actually trying to ban rubbers and things like that also?
I'm not sure, but nothing would surprise me at this point. But I could talk about sex ed all day. But what I will tell you is, this is an issue we can have an impact right here, right now. If you have kids, and I've done this where I train the kids and the parents, I don't even go to the school. It's even better if we have the kids do it. But even if you're a grandparent retired, if you have no skin in the game, it does not matter. You can have an impact on your school by going and talking to them. We are good at this. We are very good at this, of getting this in. What about LGBTQ issues? Is it legal in Michigan to discriminate for being gay? Can you fire somebody? Can you refuse housing? Can you refuse service? The answer in almost every state is yes, yes, and yes. Now, what can you do about that? At the state level? Probably not much, to be honest. But what about your local cities? Do you have cities throughout Michigan that protect the LGBTQ? The answer is yes. In Kentucky, we have 9. And on the front page of the paper in Paducah, Kentucky, was this sign. When equality is under attack, atheists show up. One of the most powerful activism things we can do is show up. Did we lead the charge for this ordinance? No. But did we show up? Yes. Did we show up as individuals? No. We showed up as our group in Paducah with signs, and everybody knew we were there. And what a warm reception we got while we were there. Because why I'm here today telling you these are atheist issues we need to get involved, as soon as I leave this door and I'm in the public, those words never come out of my mouth. I am saying this is an equal rights issue. I'm here to support you. People thought when we got marriage equality, all of our problems went away. That's not true. There's a whole slew of bills coming down the pipeline that you're going to see come January. This is just the beginning. There are a lot more. And they are bad. They are some of the worst of the worst. I could talk about this all day. What about Gideon's Bibles? Do Gideons pass out Bibles in your public schools here in Michigan? I don't believe you. Gideons pass out 85 million Bibles a year. And almost every state I go to, they're like, they're not in our schools. They're everywhere. You just don't know it and you're not paying attention. Rarely are they not somewhere where you live passing out Bibles in your schools. I would take that bet. Now, if you're going to find me one school, the school that's teaching sex ed, maybe that one school doesn't. Okay, I'll give you that one school. You will find schools that don't. But I guarantee you, where everybody's from in this room, there is at least one school, probably more, passing out Bibles that are Gideon's Bibles. They are everywhere. We've seen principals do this, vice principals. They go into the schools. Now, the law's been pretty clear in kicking out the Gideons of doing this illegally. We've gotten pretty good at it. But often one of their methods is to do it on the sidewalk in front of the public school. So it's legal. It becomes a legal distribution. Right when they let out, they're right there passing out their Bibles. So a lot of people throw up their hands and say, we can't do anything. So let me ask you this. Do you find it hard for this group or anybody here, for atheists, to get press and coverage here? Do you think it's a challenge to get press? I don't see anybody saying it's easy. So, awesome. So, I want to read this word for word, and I'll give you a real-life example. If any method of distribution has the potential to create media publicity, the distribution must be canceled or postponed. This is from their bylaws of the Gideons. Now, if I'm in Kentucky and I put out a headline that says, Gideons are passing out Bibles in Casey County, Kentucky, do you think anybody cares? No. Do you think anybody will cover it? Maybe one. Do you know what my headline was when I did this? Atheists descend on public schools. How much press do you think I had? All of them. Guess what words never came out of my mouth during any interview? Atheists descend on public schools never came out of my mouth whatsoever. Atheists absolutely did. because that's how I introduce myself. You need to think like a Fox News producer. If you do, the media will cover you every time. But keep in mind, if you're going to put out a headline that appeals to Fox News, more often than not, don't ever say those words in your interviews. It's a good general guideline. And I'll give you some more examples of that later. But this is also something you can have an effect on. Everywhere in Kentucky, the ACLU couldn't stop the Gideons. They kept trying. It was like whack-a-mole. We found them. They contacted us. We do this. It stopped. Every school we went to, we've stopped them. Even when it was legal distribution, because we bring the media with us everywhere we go. But guess what? We have to find them. Parents have to tell us. Students have to tell us. Also, I've heard parents say, my student opted out of this horrible religious instruction. Don't. If your kids are old enough, mature enough, and can handle it, go and report back what the details are and let us know. We're happy to write letters and remove those. But we have to have the details. What about voting? Do you think elections matter? I think Michigan was a key role in an election here in 2016. All right, Michigan, I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself because obviously you're not so good at sex. So let's see how you are on voting. And I will give you credit. You will get class credit for any one of these four, as long as you get one. When it becomes based on religious affiliation, what is the largest voting bloc in the country based on religious affiliation? I will give you credit if you get any one of the four. Baptists? Mormons, no. Evangelicals, right here. Baptists are not on the list. Catholics are right there, number 3. Evangelicals 2, Catholics 3.
If you mean religious or non-religious and free thinkers, probably about 18%.
We're number 1. Non-religious is now the largest voting bloc in the country. That's atheists, agnostics, deists. Some people believe in God, but they're not part of any formalized religion. That's amazing. But I want to debunk this right now. Yes?
Are you saying the most people who vote are the non-religious, or are you saying non-religious people vote at the highest percentage?
I'm glad you asked. Great question. I'll clarify those for the couldn't hear. The reason I say we're not a voting bloc is because for 2 reasons. The very first reason is we don't vote. Do you know what the percentage of evangelicals was for the 2016 election? 86%. 80% voted for Trump. Ours, not even half that. Not even close. Second issue is, we're not a voting bloc. If you want to appeal to evangelicals, what's the one issue you got to be against? Everybody knows that. If I say, hey, I want you to appeal to non-religious, and I went around this room and asked each of you, what is the number 1 most important issue to you here today? Would the list look something like this? Right. And it's not even on there. You know why? Because I ran out because it stopped here. And you proved my point that people yelling out from the crowd, you don't even have my issue on here. It needs to be bigger. So here's the thing. I want you to think like you're a politician for a minute. People ask me this question all the time. Jim, if we're the largest voting bloc, why don't politicians appeal to us? It's very simple. Very simple. Most politicians aren't uber religious. Your Mike Pences of the world are, but they go where the votes are. So if I were to say to you running for office, because Dan, you look like you want to run for office, and I say, look, I know you're pro-choice, but we have this non-religious voting bloc here that you could appeal to, but they don't turn out to vote. None of them do. And you have to agree on all these issues, plus the issues that we didn't mention. And if you're on the wrong side of just one of them, they're going to stay home. But if you just say you're pro-life now all of a sudden, I'll get you an 86% voter turnout, 80% of them for you. Who are you going to cater to? It's very simple why no one caters to us and why they cater to the religious right. They make it easy. We make it very difficult. So, what is the solution? We must do 2 things. The very first thing we must do is unite under one banner and become single-issue voters. And that banner is equality. If you discriminate, we cannot vote for you. Every one of these issues on the board is an equal rights issue. And I want to give you a real-life example of what this looks like. And think if every national organization around the country did this. Dying with dignity is an equal rights issue. They're discriminating against our senior citizens. Sex education is an equal rights issue. They're discriminating against our students. Abortion is an equal rights issue. They're discriminating against women. LGBTQ is an equal rights issue. They're just, wait a minute, they already do that. LGBTQ did two things that changed the world in this order. Can anybody tell me what they are? Not marriage equality. Well, first is they came out. They said, I'm gay. We must come out as atheists and not be afraid to use the word atheist and say I'm an atheist.
Here, here.
I don't care about group names. Group names, you can call yourselves whatever you want. You can be Bobs, jugglers, and freethinkers. That's fine. Don't care. But as individuals, we must use the word, not be afraid to use the word atheist and come out. Second, and I heard somebody say part of this, they changed their wording to equal rights. Because people like equality, they don't want to discriminate. And once they did those two things, the majority of America now supports marriage equality. If we came out as atheists and we frame our issues not as atheist issues, we frame them as equal rights issues, and you can see this by our signs right here, we change the world. It's effective. It's very effective. Because I have passed legislation in the city of Cincinnati. I've done it at school boards in Kentucky, Ohio. I've had legislators come to me and say, Jim, can you propose legislation? And these are people that are religious legislators. I've had politicians come to me and say, Jim, when I'm at a protest and I see you there, I know I'm on the right side of the issue. We became known as fighting for people's rights, and they're not afraid to be associated with us when we're on the ground doing these things. Yes?
Far right has cannibalized the equal rights idea and turned it against us. They say that they have equal rights to preach the gospel in the schools, to teach anti-science along with science. They have equal rights to, bring Nazis out on marches because, hey, the liberals do it. We should have equal rights. So I have a problem with false equivalencies.
This isn't a false equivalency.
As it pertains to creating an equal rights movement.
But these are equal rights issues. And what they're doing is not equal rights. So this is what my daughter said in her speech at the HB 258 abortion ban. You have every one of our legislators have the right to their deeply held religious beliefs. And I will defend that right to believe whatever you want, even if I disagree. But you do not have that right to impose that on the women in Ohio. That's the difference. They're trying to impose that belief. And treating Christians equally is not discriminating against Christians. It is absolutely not.
They're demanding the right to put creationism next to evolution in the textbook.
We need evidence-based solutions. That's not equality. Yes?
Are you aware that there are progressive Christians who would stand right along with you and against the evangelical?
Absolutely. I stand with them all the time. I work with Catholics for Choice. I went on a bus ride for 2.5 hours with a nun to fight the death penalty side by side. When the Interfaith Coalition did this big interfaith, and it wasn't an interfaith where they're just different Christian denominations. They are Hindu, Muslim, Christian. Guess who they asked to do the invocation? Me. Why? Why would they ask the atheist to deliver the invocation with all these religions there? Hundreds of them. Because I was the only one that would deliver an invocation that was inclusive for everybody there. I can speak, or any atheist can speak in the city of Cincinnati, or in part of Ohio, or northern Kentucky, in front of crowds of 10,000. My daughter was speaking in front of 15,000 people there. Because we have normalized atheism by doing the things that we're talking about. And we are going outside of the community. We are not working with just atheists. We are working with religious people. We are working with government. We are working with anybody who agrees with us on the issue. And when I tell people, Jim, I agree with everything you said, but don't care about the but. You can disagree with me on everything but one issue. And if you agree with me on that one issue, I will march right by your side to do it. And if you disagree with me on abortion, I'm happy to be on the opposite picket line with you when it comes to that issue. Yes?
One of the big complaints I have with the left is that the right seems to be able to take an issue and bring it down to something really simple.
Yes.
And the left doesn't see, either they don't know how or they won't.
It gets complicated. And this isn't a right or left issue. These are, if religion is being used to discriminate, we must be in this space. It's not a right or left issue. But also our messaging sucks. Because we're caring about all these issues, and I'm glad you shout this out. Somebody usually does. There's issues that aren't even on this list. These are all equal rights issues. They are. People are using religion to discriminate against people on all these issues. We have to have our framing. And if you want to break down my argument, that's where it gets the best, because I can defend each one of these individually and get down into the weeds. But most time we get down into the weeds and you lose me. I need the headline. I need for people to pay attention. We must get better at marketing. We must get better at messaging, and this is how we do it. Why I'm here today telling you these are atheist issues, when I go out there, I never bring up religion. I don't. I say, I'm Jim Helton. I'm with American Atheists. I'm openly identify as an atheist, and that's the last time I talk about it. Unless they ask me questions, I'm happy to answer. But I'm not there to preach about atheism, tell them their Bible sucks. I'm here to defend their issue and answer any questions they may have. Like when I was at the Ohio Sex Ed Summit, they thanked us. We'd like to thank American Atheists for training and offering any training to anybody that signs up. They're going to come out there. And everybody looked at me, every workshop I went to, and said, I just got to ask. Why does American Atheists, this is their number one issue at a grassroots level? I don't get it. And I just asked one question. I said, hey, what is the number one reason you can't get sex ed in the schools? What is your problem? And they had a group discussion that lasted about 5 to 10 seconds. And someone goes, well, if we're being honest, it's religion. And I went, huh. And to everybody, almost every single person around me goes, can I get a card? I let them say it. I never do. But they often get there. They often get there. What about government invocations? Are you praying before city council meetings? No? Awesome. Good. What about other cities? I heard yeses. Absolutely. Yes?
We got our ass kicked in Jackson County over that issue with the city invocation.
When you say get your ass kicked, they won't let you do it?
No, they were doing it. They were stopped from doing it for a while, and then there was a court decision not too awful long ago that again allows them to do it. But it has to be under some other auspices where it's not just...
So, yeah, Greece versus Galloway was a goofy decision out of New York. And here's word for word from the Supreme Court decision, but here's the best part. Atheists are allowed to deliver invocations. They can't stop you at a city council meeting, for the most part. If they do government prayer, they have to allow you to do it. They can't do it at school boards. State house is a totally different animal, but city councils, they have to let you, yes.
Do you help with invocation?
Yes, we have an entire toolkit. I'll send you the toolkit. It'll tell you how to do this step by step. It'll also provide a link with multiple invocations that you can do. We have a press release that goes with it. We'll even help put it out for you.
Well, when C-SPAN covers the House, they always have an invocation at the opening of the session. I was wondering if American Atheists could challenge that, not necessarily eliminate it, but demand.
The courts haven't ruled on this. That's a totally separate animal that's going through litigation when you talk about the state house, federal government, because they actually have paid clergy. It doesn't follow the scope of Greece versus Galloway. Basically, when it comes to state houses who have refused us, this is going through litigation, so we're not taking on new ones. We're just kind of waiting to see what happens here, which is going to affect everything else. So the answer is wait and see.
I'm just thinking of,
Yeah.
of the visual.
Yeah.
C-SPAN hits the entire country and the world, and
Yeah, but it's a wait and see. I mean, that's really, it's a wait and see. But I'll tell you my favorite story, which will kind of back up some of the claims I made previously. Justin Scott, our state director in Iowa, took this on as his personal mission. He contacted every city that he could think of where he heard they were doing a government invocation, and he traveled the state, even though he wasn't a resident of those cities, to deliver an invocation. Some, he made a phone call, a few emails. Some, he had to do a lot of emails. Some had to be backed up with a friendly attorney letter from American Atheists to remind them of his rights. But eventually, he delivered these all through the state, except for one. Because the mayor said, this is a Christian town, and we only do Christian prayers, and there will be no atheists in this town. Some are paraphrasing there, but wouldn't let him in and tore up our letter. So something interesting happened. There was an older gentleman there that was not an atheist, well respected, and said, this isn't right. They're discriminating against this gentleman. That we have atheists. Who knew? We have Hindus. We have Muslims. We are not a Christian town. We are diverse and we're inclusive. We should welcome everybody. This isn't right. And he decided to run against the mayor. But he did it too late, meaning they couldn't put him on the ballot. So they said, you can still run, but it'll have to be a write-in. But we all know how that goes, right? He ran on an equal rights issue of discriminating against atheists, and he won by a landslide of 65% as a write-in candidate. That is the power of messaging, of saying this is an equal rights issue, you're discriminating. He called Justin Scott and said, for my very first meeting as mayor, I would like to invite you to deliver the humanist invocation. And of course, Justin Scott said, no, I'd rather not. He's like, you ran on being inclusive, but you heard and saw all the backlash I received. Do you think anyone else in your community is going to come forward but Christian prayers? No. He said, well, I can deliver this human invocation. The next 11 months in a row will all be Christian prayers because everyone else is afraid. If you want to be inclusive and you want to welcome all religions, you'll eliminate this practice and do a moment of silence. That way everybody can pray to whatever god or goddesses they want, or in my case, I might actually think. Your call. And guess what they did? The mayor took a vote instead of doing an invocation to eliminate invocations, and now they do a moment of silence, and that's it. That is the power of one person doing one thing with our support. And he's the one who helped write this toolkit along with the group in Florida. These are things you can do that's not that hard. Have you seen In God We Trust bumper stickers on police cars in cities? It's the national motto. You can't get rid of it. It's not going to happen. But I will tell you this. In every city and every school that I am currently working with, I've never had one of those go up. Because they either call me and say, hey, Jim, what do you think about this? And I'm like, they go, yeah, I thought so. Or I don't even find out about it until a month or two later, like, yeah, some church came in trying to put in these God We Trust. We thought that was a bad idea. We just said no. If we are involved with these schools and with these cities, they consider us an ally. I am not a threat. Normally when you walk into a school as an atheist, oh, you're going to sue us. That's how they think of us. You're the atheist going to sue us. What we did wrong? When I walk into the school board, it's like, hey, Jim, how you doing? I'm getting high fives, hugs, shaking hands. They like me. I am an ally. I work with them. I make their job easier. I also do it under the one condition they always told me, like Cincinnati told me, Jim, we'll do this as long as you keep it out of the media. I even had one school district say they would do it as long as I promised not to show up at the school board meeting. Which I obliged. I said I did not. But if they don't, I'm going to blast them in the media. You know, superintendent votes to increase teen pregnancy in XX high school. The media is our friend. And I'll give you one more example on media attention, and this is probably what I'm most notably famous for. I live in between the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. This is my home. This is where I live. Anybody hear of the Ark Encounter? Okay. Anybody see, if you can't read this, I dropped a 15-foot banner in front of the Ark Encounter that says Genocide and Incest Park. And we had signs that said this exit. How much media attention do you think I got? I mean, I was doing Fox and Friends Live. There were 6 countries there, 6 documentary film crews. You name it, they were there. I was doing interviews from 8:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon nonstop. I missed the whole first protest. I still do it. I had an interview from Israel. I did 2 back-to-back interviews for 2 days with Israel just last month. They came in. You cannot do a story on the Ark in any detail without calling me. The interesting thing about this is, when I did all my press interviews, not counting atheist media, if you put me on an hour podcast, I told you lots of good stories. But do you think I ever mentioned these words? No. What were my talking points? It's anti-science. They're lying to kids. They receive up to $18 million in state tax funding while maintaining their discriminatory hiring practices. 2% of all employees' paychecks in the county go to pay back the $65 million junk loan of the Ark. The county gave them over $200,000 in cash. The city gave them over 100 acres for $1. If you're single, you got to sign a vow of chastity saying you can't have sex till you're married. You have to sign a statement of faith saying the earth is only 6,000 years old. I can keep going all day. This is an all-day talk, like for days.
Is it still open?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. You got to be Christian to work there.
Yes. Oh, and Catholics can't work there. Like, no, you have to be a young earth creationist to work there.
Where exactly is it?
Grant County, Kentucky, about 40 minutes south of Cincinnati, Ohio. We protested on their opening day, on their anniversary, July 7th. You should come. Aaron Ra's been there, American Atheists, American Humanists is coming, Hammett Menta, the Friendly Atheist, Seth Andrews, the Thinking Atheist. It's the who's who of parties. You should come. Yes?
I was there for opening day, if you don't remember, Jim.
I don't, be honest, because I barely saw anybody that day. But I was so glad you're there. Yeah, the first one was a blur, yes.
Did you say that you just put that sign up to get the publicity, to get it in the paper?
Yeah, so it was a billboard campaign. When we announced we were going to do it, I woke up at 6:30 in the morning to Ken Ham tweeting at me for an hour. The press was at my door at 8:30, called me at 8:30. By 9, I was doing interviews all day, just the threat of putting it up. When the billboard company denied us because of all the publicity, I got a whole nother round of press. When we did a mobile billboard, we got more press, and when the mobile billboard backed out because he feared for his life, we got more press. And then when we did this, it went nuts. The amount of press I got out of this thing was insane. But here's why we did it. Several reasons. While this may have offended somebody, hell, we had people in our own group that were offended. We changed the story. The majority of every article written about the Ark was a fluff piece and positive. While atheists were writing about the problems of the Ark, not any major media outlet said anything negative to it leading up to opening day. We checked. Almost every single press outlet, even Fox News, the Christian Daily, the Christian Post, the Christian World News, all mentioned the problems with the Ark in our talking points. Anytime the Lexington Herald does an article on the Ark, they link to the interview of our protest. The New York Times admitted to me, the photographer, Jim, I'm so glad you did this because our reporter was sent here to do a fluff piece on the Ark. She talked to you and you changed the entire story. Everything was negative. Yes?
CBS claims there is an area of Michigan where the government officials have said to the public, you cannot buy property there unless you're a Christian, and they're getting away with it. Have you heard of this?
It's on Lake Michigan, Bayview, Bay something. They have restricted covenants in the deeds in the court rule that's illegal.
Illegal. Yeah, I heard the court rule too.
So when they set up the community in, I think it was 1850s, they put restricted covenants in the deed that the property couldn't be sold to a non-Christian. But someone challenged it.
Recently, very recently. Let me ask you this on this. How many people heard this is going bankrupt or in financial trouble? Any guesses how much money they made in 2017?
Didn't they just have to post that not too long ago? They were trying to extrapolate it.
Yeah, how much money do you think they made? Just guess. $67 million. It's a cash cow. The city and county are going bankrupt because they gave everything under the sun away. But the actual Ark is a cash cow. Now, where the misinformation is coming from is Ken Ham promised 2.5 million people would come the first year. Less than 1 million did. The second year, he said he was going to double attendance to 2 million. Less than 1 million did. He's just hovering under 1 million people. But at the same time, just under 1 million people at $40 a pop is a lot of money, plus merchandise, food. He's making a killing on this thing. When we did this, we had 2 targets. Can anybody tell me what they were when I did this campaign? There was a 1 and 2 punch on my targets. Huh? Money? No.
It would be to get the government's funding the hell out of this kind of...
No. I live in Kentucky. That wasn't an option.
That's criminal.
It is. And actually, the state of Kentucky denied him, said, hey, we'll give you this $18 million as long as you promise not to discriminate and sign this paper. Ken Ham sued the state of Kentucky for discriminating against his right to discriminate. That's what it said. We got Governor Bevin elected, who then replaced the transportation cabinet overnight, and they said, we're good with it and approved it. We knew we couldn't change it. So while it should be, we knew we couldn't. Anyone else who our number 1 target was on this campaign? No. 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 The media. It wasn't creationists, it was the media. We have creationists every year park in our parking spot and say, I'm here for the Creation Museum. I'm like, oh, sorry, you're in the wrong spot. And we escort them and tell them how to get there. were not there. They weren't our target. Because I did not care how many people drove by on that opening day, and we do this every year. The international attention we got to get the word out of the problem was our number one goal. My number two goal was firebrand atheist. I got accused, Jim, you're only preaching to the choir. You're only appealing to your base. And I was like, damn right. Why would I do such a thing? Why would I put out an action that would only appeal to my base? I will tell you. Often I feel people water down their message so much that they fail to inspire anybody. When you do an action, you must know who your target is. Creationists were not my target. Christians were not my target. Politicians were not my target. If they were, I would have never have done something like this. But people came from around the country here. Remember that story of Justin Scott? That state director in Iowa on the invocations? I met him here. See Ryan back there, our assistant director for Michigan? I met him there, along with a half dozen other directors from around the country who are doing good work, a dozen groups that are doing this work around the country because I met there. There's the treasurer of the board of American Atheists now who I met because of this protest. A lot of the board members came out. These are the people that are willing to volunteer, willing to give me the hours, willing to go to schools, willing to do this, and willing to do the work like Jim's doing, putting this together. The community service and humanist people in our group said, Jim, next year will you please tone down your message? And I said, absolutely not. I'm going to double the amount of things I'm doing. But I'll make you this promise. Keep up with me. I want you to drown me out in good deeds. Do you know how many community service projects the Tri-State Freethinkers did in 2018, year to date? 54. We are not the firebrand crazy group. We receive national attention for the amount of community service due, recognized by the American Humanist Association. Our largest donors are Duke Energy, General Electric, Amazon, Kroger. Where now the city of Cincinnati and the University of Cincinnati employees can make donations to the atheist affiliate because of the amount of good work we do. This isn't all we do. This is a piece. But we have to know who our target is, and it's effective. So when you do an action, appeal. Now, when I want to appeal to my creationist neighbors or Christians, I went to Habitat Humanity and worked right alongside them. You have to know who your target is. If I was to target firebrand atheists and I watered down my message so much that says, can't we all get along, how many people do you think I would have had show up? No. Yeah. But remember how I held up this sign? Do you know where this came from? You were there, I believe, weren't you? Or was that the year before? This was the second year of the protest. Planned Parenthood stood on stage in front of all the national media and said, when equality is under attack, atheists show up. Planned Parenthood sponsored this event. See all those pink signs? That's Planned Parenthood. That said, you're defunding women's health care in Kentucky, yet you're funding this $18 million project that's anti-science and discriminatory against women and LGBTQ. That was the power of our partners showing up along our side in the community we built, where Planned Parenthood was right there alongside us with us. But that leads me to the ACES program. Activism, community, education, social. When I talk to groups around the country, their three biggest challenges are following, and you tell me if this is true for Michigan. Lack of money, lack of diversity, and lack of volunteers. Would you agree with that, Jim? Yep. It's one person doing all the things. You cannot create a vibrant community with one person doing all the things. You must appeal to different people. So I'm going to give you an idea what this looks like. Activism, who does that appeal to, usually? Your firebrand atheist like myself? Community service, who does that appeal to? Your humanists, good without God? Educational meetings like this, who does that appeal to? Your free thinkers, your skeptics? And what does the social do? Appeals to everybody. Everybody likes that. But if you want multiple people doing things, would you like your community to do some community service? Would you like that here in Michigan? No? Yes? Maybe? Yeah. Would you like to get involved with your schools and your board in the city? It takes different people. One person should be in charge of the activism. One person should be in charge of community service. A different person education, a different person social. This divides up from one person doing everything. Eventually, it is one person. Our community service, we have an entire committee of people. An entire committee. We have 2 or 3 people making the decisions. We have several people help out, and we have dozens and dozens of people working these events. We're feeding 300 people on Christmas Day with no worries at all, just like that. It's easy. We do this all the time. We have a number of people doing activism. We have an army of people do education meetings that set these things up. And social, we have our fair share of people that like to drink and bitch about religion and do family events. But it's a game changer. It also helps with donations when you get known in the community. People don't donate money for social events. But people will donate money. How much? We did raise a lot of money from the ARC. Somebody said money. That wasn't our goal. But the byproduct was we raised a lot of money. Community service raises a lot of money. People are like, hey, I don't have the time to commit what you're doing, but I really support your work. Can I write you a check? Or people's like, hey, I'm on a fixed income. I can't write a check that big, but I have time. Can I volunteer? It really creates that community. And I want to show you the most important thing. This is probably my most important slide. If you're going to get anything out of this talk, I hope it's this. We have education. Who likes education meetings here in Speaker's Talk? I do. We have a rule in Kentucky. You can't come piss us off unless you give us something to do about it. I need actionable items. So if you're going to come tell us about the problems of the world, I need an actionable item that our group can do afterwards. The other thing we do is we rarely host meetings by ourselves. So if I brought in Planned Parenthood to come speak to this group, you know the very first thing I would do is say, hey, Planned Parenthood, would you like to co-host this event with us and invite your people? We have space. Planned Parenthood fills half the room every time I do an event with them or more. Do you think the people that support Planned Parenthood are very religious for the most part? Not so much. They get with our activism committee, and we set up a series of events we could do. We wanted to do a lobby day, but we didn't know how. We didn't know how to do protests. They trained us. They needed phone banks. We did it every Monday for a quarter. And I said, no, I can only probably get every Monday, I might only be able to get 2 people, maybe 4. And they go, we only have room for 8 to 10. If you bring 2 to 4 people, you'll be my hero. We always had 2 to 4 people making phone calls. And we weren't calling, pro-lifers. We were calling supporters to get them out about messaging. It was very easy. We were going door to door. We were lobbying. They taught us how to lobby. They have professional organizers that trained us, and that's kind of ironic now that I'm training some of them. But they trained me. I got most of my training from Planned Parenthood because I didn't know how to do this, and they did it for free. Community service event. We had a women's shelter that desperately needed women's hygiene products. So we brought a truck and said at the protest, we said, hey, everybody, if you can, bring women's hygiene products. We had to bring in a second truck. 2 truck beds of women's hygiene products we donated to the women's shelter. Do you know the one thing Planned Parenthood wasn't very good at? Is just having fun because they're always doing work. So at the end of 3 or 4 months of working with Planned Parenthood, we co-hosted this event. We co-hosted this event with 6 other organizations which they hooked us up with now that we work with. We did this great community service thing. We drank beer and bitched about religion. How many members of Planned Parenthood do you think are members of the local atheist group now? More than I can count. There was only one open atheist that I knew when I went in there the first day. How many members of the atheist group are members of Planned Parenthood? More than I can count. It was a game changer. We have to get outside of our bubble. We have to work with groups. We did the exact same thing with the LGBTQ community. We do this with every speaker we come in that we try to. It doesn't always work. When we talk about the death penalty, we didn't have a good social event with the inmates, and we weren't able to do a community service project. But we did set up an activist event and an education event. But I will say, Jim cannot do this alone. He's great at organizing this meeting, but he is one person doing a ton. It takes a community for people to step up and say, I am very passionate about community service. I think we should feed the homeless or do a free store food bank that doesn't even take money. I'm willing to help you, Jim. Hey, I think I would like to do sex education. I'll help with that. Jim, can I give you some help with that? Jim, you would support anybody that wants to do those things, wouldn't you? But he needs help. He needs people. One person cannot do this alone. And this is true around the country. When I talk to groups around the country, this is the common theme of one person supporting all the things. So out of this talk, I hope you get 2 things. 1, you need to get involved. 2, pick one issue. Pick one issue to go after. Just one. I hope it's sex ed, because that's the easiest one. But I will take any issue you want to go after.
Yeah, on that note about a unifying issue, I think if you think about one additional one that might actually cover all spectrums and might address a lot of the issues that you talked about, would be getting money out of politics. Because that's the core of all the problems, because the money influences the decisions, the votes, the appropriations, and that influence is what makes it so that honest solutions to our problems cannot be reached.
I won't argue that, and I'm aware of that. And there's lots of issues that weren't even on this list because I only had, a limited amount of time.
And everybody will support that.
Right.
Nobody likes money.
Whatever you group wants to do that's local to your community, you should get involved with. Occasionally, we get involved with things that have nothing to do with an atheist issue because we are so involved in our community. The community is reaching out to us, asking us, and as a community partner, we're like, this really isn't our issue, but the community is asking for our help, and because we're a community partner, we're going to help them. And the fact that they reach out to the atheist all the time, even the religious people said, hey, if we want this issue, have you called the atheist? And everybody's like, what? Yeah, we can't do this without them. And they call us every time. It's a game changer. The power of the ACES program builds a vibrant community where we're doing the things. And people need, where we have these ideas, if people take initiative, people will show up. But like, if you target people, let's talk about the diversity. I talked about the money. I talked about the volunteers. The local atheist group's board, 70 to 90% women usually. Guess why? Because we work with Planned Parenthood. We have a lot of young, powerful women leaders. Only a third of our board is straight because we work with the LGBT community so closely. I won't point out which third. If you want diversity, it takes effort. You have to go to where the people are and to the issues. If you want more people of color, show up to an issue they care about and support them, and they will show up for you. And realize they're not all religious. But if you don't show up to their issues, we did show up one time, and they're like, I haven't seen you. Where have you been? I was like, that's true. It's valid. But I'm here to support you now, and I will be. Let me know when you need me. And we show up. It's the most important thing you can do. And not just show up as an individual, show up as a group. How many people went to the Women's March or March for Science in the last couple years? A lot of hands. How many people knew you were there? Like, did any of the organizers know you were there? Did they know atheists were in the crowd? Did they know your group? I see one nod. Mostly no. Every time I go to a group, we have T-shirts, we have signs, and I always introduce myself to the leader. Even if I'm the only atheist there, I said, I'm Jim Helton with American Atheists. I want to let you know our people are here, and there's 500 or 1,000 people behind me. I don't know which ones are members or not. There's probably one of them. Well, when I went to the Women's March with 15,000 people and I said, we are here, I went, holy shit, there's a lot of us here. But always introduce yourself. They don't know you're there. We speak at all these, because every time we go, even at the State House, we're like, hey, I understand you need religion to speak because against this issue, but please make sure you invite an atheist to speak as well. And we get invited almost every time. Only because we show up and we're like, hey. And it's not just me, because I travel the country. It was me, then it was my daughter. Now she travels the country. It's somebody else. But we always just say, hey, we're always there. And we always say, hey, can we have an atheist speak? And we deliver good speeches. And they show up. So here's my ask today. We need volunteers willing to testify at state houses, school boards, city councils, invocations. We need people to get involved. We need somebody to become a director for American Atheists. This is a change. When I started, we had state directors. It was not a very effective program. Do you think one person can handle an entire state effectively with anything meaningful? No. They told me I had over 30 directors when I was hired. It was less than 10. If you responded to me in an email within 2 weeks, I considered you active. That was the bar. Currently, I lost track after 60 directors we have now. Our goal is to put a director in every city where we have a group and support them with training, signs, materials, press releases, anything you need. My job description is my job's to say yes more than to say no. Yes.
Curiosity, are you saying that in effect you're trying to make official local groups under the auspices and control of national?
No. What I am saying is I want to have one person in that group with American Atheists that I can train. We don't do chapters. If the local group would like to become an affiliate of an American Atheist, I can give you resources. Your group name can be what you want. You dictate your policy. You dictate your rules. We dictate nothing. You get to decide. While I love sex ed, you can come to me, and John, and say, I don't like sex ed. I want to do invocations. And I would be like, okay, do you need support? What do you need? You tell us what you need. My job is to say yes, provide you what the group. My job is not to dictate what you should or shouldn't do. I am just showing you today the possibilities that are there. Some of them, there is more than this. But I am not here to dictate on high what your group can and can't do. If you need help, I will help you as much as you want help. But only as much as you ask or want. But the advantage is, like in Kentucky, we have 8 directors. We have a director with every major group in Kentucky, and they are working together. They are communicating together. We did Ask an Atheist Day in every city, all at the same time, including the state capitol. We are doing the ARC protest together. We start doing protests together. We start showing up for each other's events. We start providing resources. We start doing press releases together on issues now. Well, that'll be next year we're going to do that. Like on Veterans Day, like every local paper, our directors are doing this. We're starting to unify as a movement and make sure American Atheists isn't goal to say, hey, we're American Atheists. You know what my job is? To promote you and say, this is our group. If you would like to add an affiliate of American Atheists at the end of that, we would appreciate that. But my job is to promote your local group. That is my job. My job isn't to put out a press release and me speak on this issue about your crazy politician. It's to give you the press release so you can speak on behalf of your local group, and it's your voice speaking. And you can write it. We'll just help you edit it if you would like some better verbiage.
But from a legal point, this is what I'm trying to find out. You have no legal tie to the local group.
No. We are just here to offer a lending hand and assist for what you want. We are not chapters, money, none of that.
And why don't you have local chapters?
Maddow and Murray O'Hara got rid of those a long time ago for the legal liability, and I'm not going to go into all the details on the legal liability, but what we have found is all politics are local. If I try to dictate to you about what should be done in Michigan, it's very different than California, which is different than other areas. We want you to dictate what you want to do and how you want to do it. I am just here to offer resources on the things you want to do. And that is the biggest thing I can do. And if you would like, we would like your group to become an affiliate. It's a simple form. You can fill it out. We'll put you on the map. We'll promote you. We will promote you. I am not here to say what you can do for American Atheists. I'm here to say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? If you'd like to become a member of American Atheists, we would love your support. But I will also tell you, the local group needs support. Jim, what's this local group's budget annually? 0. You can't operate like that. The Ark Encounter's annual budget, they built a $100 million project with $67 million. But what if I told you, if you work with me and you do this right, I could get you a $5,000 or $10,000 budget within a year? What could you do with that? What if I told you it was $20,000 to $30,000 if you did it right? What could you do then? You need to be seen as a force in your community and your city, and we can help you do that. Only if you have the desire. If you don't have the desire or the will, I can't help you. I think Jim's amazing from when I talk to him, but if it's just him, we can only do so much. If it's just Ryan, he's amazing too, he can only do so much. It takes a community of people willing to do their part and their piece of it to make this happen. And wrapping up my last couple things, the American Atheist Convention's coming to Cincinnati, Ohio, Easter weekend. We have actually rented out Fountain Square where we will march and do a rally on Fountain Square. I've been told they normally do the Bible and they do the rosary all day that day, but not on that day. Because we rented the whole thing out and we'll do a rally there. It will be an amazing conference. But unlike other conferences where we just had amazing speakers, we're actually doing training. Planned Parenthood will be there training people on their issues. LGBTQ will be training on these issues. We will be training. There will be multiple trainings on a lot of issues where we're training directors, we're training affiliates, we're training individuals on invocations. There'll be lots of training involved in workshops, which I'm super excited about. Because when I went to Planned Parenthood Convention, I'm like, they had great speakers, but I became trained. When I went to these other conferences, atheist conferences, I'm like, I had a great time and I heard some great speakers, but what did I learn? Beyond educational, I didn't learn any tangible things, and we need to change that. And the very last thing I'll say is we need more of this. And not just because this is my daughter. This is the cover of USA Today from International Women's Day. We need students involved. You need youth. People listen to students. Give them a voice. Never make them talk, but if they want to talk, give them a voice. People listen. I'm an old white guy. When I talk about sex ed, what do you think they do when my daughter comes up here? Anybody heard her speak in person, by the way? A few people. What do you think?
Fantastic.
People listen.
It's awesome.
We need students. We train other students to do this. My daughter's first speech was 2 sentences. That's all she could muster. She was shy. Her second speech was 30 seconds. There were a dozen speakers there, and she's the only one anybody remembers. Freedom from Religion Foundation, she spoke for 5 minutes. That was the longest she could do. She was probably the most expensive speaker per minute because she spoke 5 minutes. And she's the one that most people talk about at the convention she was at. It's a powerful thing to have our students, and have our students representing the local atheist group. She goes, I am the equal rights advocate for the Tri-State Freethinker. She represents the group when she does it. It's absolutely fantastic to do, to get our youth involved. Especially if you tell them you have a voice, you can make change, and sex ed's one of the #1 things they can actually go after. They can talk to our politician. My politician won't meet me, but my daughter says, hey, I'm a student, I'll be in town. They responded to her within 3 minutes. So with that said, my name's Jim Helton with American Atheists. Thank you so much for coming out. I'll stick around here.